I love you guys.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Flicks Files. Today I thought I would talk about a sports movie, a basketball movie. And this is a movie that I have been in love with for over 30 years. I first saw it in the early 90s, and I believe it was broadcast on British television. And I loved it from the first time that I saw it. And I bought it on VHS back in the day. And as we all did, I then sold it and moved on to DVDs and bought the DVD of this movie. And now here we are in the 21st century, and I got it on Blu-ray. And I bought it from America. Hence the title of it is the American title. And it's the 1986 movie Hoosiers, which I believe in England it was called Best Shot. And I think the reason they renamed it is, was dumb English would probably think, well, what does Hoosiers mean? And I think, about 10 years ago, I rewatched it and I thought, well, what does Hoosiers mean? And I looked it up, and I think it means that it's like a name given to residents of the state of Indiana, is I think the correct explanation for it. So yeah, this movie was directed by a guy called David Anspaugh, and I believe it was his first theatrical film. I think before this, he only ever did TV shows, and I think Hill Street Blues was one of the things he did quite a lot of episodes for. And there are many things I like about this film, and normally I don't do spoilers on my channel, but with this, it's kind of inevitable because sports movies of this vintage were very much a trope in terms of how the story played out. There was always an underdog, either a team or a single person, and the arc would be that they would go through and fight against all the odds and then come out triumphant. And that's what happens in this film. So full spoilers, I'm going to kind of break the film down as best I can, entirely from my memory. I'm not referring to any notes or anything. And we'll see how we get on. So why do I like this movie so much? One of the main reasons is Gene Hackman. Now, I've always liked Gene Hackman as an actor, and he's one of those actors for me, much like Jack Nicholson, Al Pacino, that whenever he's in a movie, it just immediately lifts the whole film. And he's absolutely brilliant in this. He plays a character called Norman Dale, and the movie starts where he arrives at Hickory High School, and he's been given a job by an old friend of his who's the principal there. So he's the new history teacher stroke basketball coach. And what's happened to the team is that the previous coach died, and their star player, who is a young chap called Jimmy, left the team. And as a result, the team has suffered. And so Gene Hackman arrives at the high school, and he's, other than his friend who's the principal, he's given a bit of a cold shoulder by the people that he meets. The town, who treat their high school basketball games very, very seriously, have a little mini meeting, and they invite him along to it as the new coach, to kind of pick his brain. But it soon transpires that they have their own ideas as to how he should coach their team. And Gene Hackman's character, Ever the Gentleman, kind of, politely cuts them short and makes his excuses and then leaves. And sure enough, his first session at the gym, he has kind of a cold exchange with the caretaker coach that's been looking after the team until he arrived. And Gene Hackman makes it very clear to the team that he's in charge and that he wants them to follow his way of doing things. And immediately he rubs shoulders with two of the team players who are kind of very rude to him, and they're not listening to him while he's giving them his introductory speech. And he pulls them up on it to the point that he ejects them from the gymnasium and just sends them out. And you can immediately see the other players all thinking, oh gosh, we're going to have to, watch our manners with this guy. He's very strict. And later on, the father of one of the players that he sent out comes back into the gym with his son and makes him apologize to the coach. And, so he accepts him back into the team. So the movie kind of plays out where he is trying to gel with the team using his own coaching techniques that he has. And to begin with, there's a lot of animosity between them. Like, for instance, one of the first games that they play where he's the coach, he tells them that they have to pass the ball 4 times before they take a shot at the basket. And his reason for doing that is to kind of discipline them in the art of passing. And during the game, some of the actual best players in the team obviously defy what he's telling them to do and just take a shot at the basket the second that they get the ball. And you can see Gene Hackman sat in the stands getting very, very cross with this.
You guys remember what we worked on in practice, all right? I want to see it on the court! How many times are we going to pass before we shoot? 4. How many? 4. 4!
And it's around that time that his friend, the principal, has a heart attack after one of the games. So this is where the brilliant Dennis Hopper comes into the movie. And Dennis Hopper plays a father of one of the players in the team. And he's a struggling alcoholic. And he has the nickname Shooter. And he's kind of a bit of a hermit that lives up in this shack in the woods. And Gene Hackman goes to see him and basically offers him the role of assistant coach, in lieu of his friend is in hospital recovering from his heart attack. And he explains to Dennis Hopper that, he'll accept him as the assistant head coach under the advisories that he cleans himself up, gets himself a suit, and stops drinking. And that's kind of Dennis Hopper's character arc, in that he tries to begin to better himself, which will hopefully bring him closer to his son, who is kind of estranged with. And there's a great moment that I like during one of the first games where Dennis Hopper is sat on the bench, where Gene Hackman deliberately gets himself ejected from the game by the ref. And he kind of hands his playbook to Dennis Hopper and tells him, to basically bring the game home and finish without him. And he puts him on the spot. And it's obvious why he's doing that. He's doing it for like character building and to build his confidence. So, the story kind of unfolds that the games that they're playing, these series of games that they're winning, they're losing quite badly. And to the point where the town rally together and they want to run a vote to get rid of him, basically. And Gene Hackman knows that this will be the end of his coaching career at the school, because at this point, nobody has been behind him. They've all been kind of giving him a hard time. And it's while they're in the village hall and they've already voted to eject him that Jimmy, the star player that has been absent all this time, suddenly turns up, and he walks up to the podium and announces that he's ready to play ball. So obviously there's a big cheer amongst all the people in the village hall because they know what this means for the team. And he says he will start to play ball under the proviso that the coach stays. So, you see Gene Hackman sat in his seat and he's looking around as if to say, oh, this is an interesting turn up for the books. So they immediately do another vote. And the result is that, the coach can stay because Jimmy has returned. And that's where the movie then, it's the beginning of their kind of winning streak, which leads them to the state final. And as a result of that, it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie is where Gene Hackman walks the team into the large gymnasium, the basketball court where the state final will be held. And this is a great moment where you see the team walk in and they're all looking around in awe because it's this huge stadium. And what Norman Dale does as the coach to kind of bring them back down to earth is brilliant. And he pulls out a tape measure and he gets one of the team to help him measure the distance of the markings on the court and then the height of the basket. And, he basically says to them, it's exactly the same measurements as where we were before.
I think you'll find it's exact same measurements as our gym back in Hickory. Okay, let's get dressed for practice.
And it's a great moment because you can just see the players go, oh, yeah, this proscenium doesn't really matter. What matters is the court, and it's exactly the same as the courts they've been playing on. And it's such a great moment, and it just brings them all back down to earth and calms them down. And so they basically get to play in the final. And it's the standard, as I said, sports movie trope of that period where it's down to the final seconds. And, a player has to make a winning shot at the basket because, they're like 2 points behind and they need a three-pointer to win. And he does it, with like 3 seconds left on the clock. And there's this huge cheer. And, they come through triumphant. And, yeah, I just really like it as a film. I love the setting. It's set in the early 50s. I thought it was based on a true story, but I did a little bit of reading up before I recorded this. And apparently it's based on a different team in a different part of America that did win the state finals. So it's kind of using elements of truth and just making it into its own little movie. But the thing that I really love about it is that everyone in the movie has a character arc. Like Gene Hackman's character begins where everybody alienates him, all the players are against him, he's having a really hard time. And by the end of the movie, he's got all the team on his side. They all love him as the coach. And all the town are behind him. I mean, even all of the town have their own character arc because they all hate him to begin with and want to get rid of him. By the end of the movie, they're all glad that he's there. And Dennis Hopper, who unfortunately his character has a bit of a relapse with his alcoholism, he ends up listening to the final game from his hospital bed in the rehabilitation center that he's in. And there's kind of a moment where he reconnects with his son, before the big game plays out. So, there's just nice little closures that occur as you get towards the end of the movie. And as a result, it's one of my favorite sports films. I don't have many sports films in my collection. I have a few. I have another basketball movie called Blue Chips, which was directed by William Friedkin, that stars Nick Nolte. And that's kind of a more modern take on basketball. That was made in the early 90s. And that's another movie that I really like because that goes into the financial dealings that happen in the background, and the perks that they give the players to encourage them into their team. And then the other sports movie that I have that I really like is called The Natural, which is a baseball movie starring Robert Redford, which was directed by Barry Levinson, who I think is most famous for directing Rain Man back in the 80s with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. But that's another sports movie that I really like, and that's probably another one that I'll do a bit more of a deep dive on in its own video, because, you know, there are some great moments in that movie too. Yeah, and I have like Rocky, the whole Rocky series as well. But I've always had a special place for Hoosiers. And if you have an interest in sports movies, and particularly basketball movies, and you've not seen Hoosiers, then even though I've kind of just laid out all of the story to you, I would say still watch it, if only to see Gene Hackman's performance throughout this film, and you know, watch him carry it through the whole way, and how he turns the team around, because it is really interesting, and it's a movie that I don't really hear many people talk about, and I've certainly not seen many films on YouTube about it. So I'm happy to kind of, you know, chuck my hat into the ring and, you know, give you my take on it, to give it a bit more love. So there we go. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.